In the vise, we have a beetle pattern. I have some friends that are going up into the snowy range, and it's always good to carry terrestrials up there. I am fishing bluegills and bass in my area, and I have a guy that I deeply admire, A.K. Best. Every time I would go to the show in Colorado, he'd be there, and he'd spend hours visiting with you. He was just a super guy. And so I got several of my ideas. This isn't exactly like the fly that A.K. tied. He used a bug skin over the top, and I'm using foam to help it float just a little bit better. But I am adding something that I've never seen on a beetle before that he swears by, and that's a little hackle tip, a white hackle tip out the back. And it makes sense because if you ever see a beetle hit the water net, their underwing comes out, and so that's kind of representing that underwing. Okay, let's get started. So I've wrapped my hook shank with UTC number 70 denier thread, and now I'm going to add the little underwing off of the beetle, and I'm going to tie this in and then take this all the way to the front, covering up that tag. Now with this body, you don't have to worry about building it too big or anything like that, because you've got enough flotation with this foam. It'll keep it above the water. Now AK says when he adds peacock curl to the body, which I am going to do, that it doesn't float as well, but he is using a lot thinner shell than I am. The bug skin is almost paper thin, so he doesn't have quite as much flotation on it. I've never had any problem with this fly sinking. So I'm going to tie that in, tie my foam in on top, and then I'm going to use a bronzed colored peacock curl, like this right here, kind of the bronzer color. This isn't in that good a shape, so I'm going to see if I can find a better one. Sorry. Yeah, these look better now. So I'm going to tie these in again along the hook shank. Back to my foam, and go ahead and tie them down to the front, and bring your thread back again. And we're going to use a black hackle, and you want it to be a little oversized so that it represents the legs. Get the right one here. Here we go. And I'm going to strip a bunch of this back so that I'm not having it stand out as I tie it in. Okay, so we have all of our materials that we need on the hook shank now. I'm going to take my thread back and pull it down and start it about there. And I'm going to take my peacock herl then and work it forward in tight wraps, and that's why I left my thread there, is because it will help me hold that peacock, those peacock wraps, tight against each other, as you can see. Then I'm going to tie that off. Snip it off. And now we're going to make pretty loose wraps with the black hackle. Palmer it up, palmer wrap up, and I'm only going to put 3 wraps in it, not because that's the amount of legs that a beetle has, but that's about what you want on this hackle. Then snip that off and kind of trim some of these off before you go on. They'll be covered up anyway. By the way, I did a Google check on AK, and they said he's 91 and living in Colorado yet. It was kind of interesting because he lived in Iowa when he was young, and he tied flies to catch bluegill and bass, and that's what I'm tying this fly for right now. Beetles are a great fly for bluegill. All right, now I'm going to trim this hackle off the top. About even with the peacock. And then I'm going to pull my foam over the top, and I'm going to hold it down tight and tie it in, and then make sure you have it on the top so that it looks like this. And that's going to be your shell of your beetle. And then AK had always cut it off at the thread, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a head here, about like that. Okay, make a couple more wraps. Bring it under the head. Use your whip finisher. Make a couple of whip finishes. Trim it off. And then I also will take this over and trim the bottom hackles off, even with the peacock. And that way you have your legs. And so that's what your finished fly looks like. And it sets up on top of the water just like a beetle. A lot of people, when they go up like into the Snowy Range and into the mountains, they'll tie these beetles on no larger than an 18. They usually tie them 22s, 20s, 18s, but this one was tied on a 14. Well, they can tie them up to 16 up there in the mountains also, but this one is tied on a 14 so that you could see it a little bit better in the vise and that. And it seems like the bluegills in my area like the bigger beetles. So I hope you enjoyed this. Go down below if you would and give me a like and add a comment if you want to. I sure appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.